Well, the origins of Six Sigma are Motorola. The mid-80s, it was around about 1985 or something, they had a major leadership meeting in the States somewhere. And at that meeting, and by the way, at that time, Motorola was one of the biggest companies in the world. And at that meeting, one of the senior executives brought up the problem that they had with discarding of waste, right? So they were rejecting products somewhere in the tune of 900 million to $1 billion of wasted product. And this initiated the interest of Bob Galvin, who was the CEO at the time. So he charged a group of people, and you'll see the reference to the guy up the top, Bill Smith, who lived between 1929 and 1993, and he's recognised as the father of Six Sigma because he and a team of people basically developed Six Sigma over a period of 4 or 5 years. They studied Japanese manufacturing, and then they incorporated many of the principles and concepts that you see, reflected in the work of Carl Gauss and Walter Shewhart and Dr. W. Edwards Deming, and came up with the Six Sigma methodology. And they were responsible for developing the DMAIC model, or the DMAIC sequence, DMAIC. Plan, Do, Check, Act, Plan, Do, Study, Act kind of underpinned that, but DMAIC is probably more intuitive and more relevant to what we do with process improvement today. On the screen, you've got a kind of a two-sided matrix, I guess. So it's not really a matrix, just a rectangle with 2 dimensions. The vertical dimension on the left-hand side of the y-axis talks about performance level. So performance low down the bottom, high up the top. And then across the bottom, time or effort involved to improve. So low time, short amount of time and low effort on the left, and then high amount or much longer periods of time and a lot of effort to improve on the right-hand end. Now, what we can do is we can draw a performance curve on this. And this performance curve is meant to indicate a potential curve from the worst performance through to optimum performance of an organisation and where they sit on it. The current performance we could plot, let's just say we plot it here as an example for having this conversation as the dot that you see on the screen there. The maximum level of performance attainable by the processes or process utilised in that organisation, let's just draw a line here hypothetically that indicates that it would be up there, right? And we've got this performance curve that increases over time, but you'll see there's a decrease, what do you call it, the gains for the effort are much less over time, which is normal for a performance curve. Now, this is one of the problems you get in organisations where the well-meaning manager or executive wants people to go from where they are today through to optimum performance. They'll say, listen, we're here today, and according to the manufacturers of this device, the optimum performance or maximum attainable is a different value. And what they want to do is implement a project to target that. Well, that's a problem because as I ask people, I talk about this in a classroom, I go, what percentage, on a scale of 0 to 100%, what percentage of variables would you need to have in control to get from current performance to the optimum performance of that process? And the idea is that it's probably 100% of the variables you would need to be controlled to get you there. Now, what methodology identifies 100% of the variables? Well, I've yet to see that one, right? It doesn't exist. So that goal is pretty much unattainable in many ways. And the second thing is the amount of effort and the time involved to take that giant leap is enormous. And people get frustrated with it. Projects take forever. It's just not the appropriate way to target business improvement. So the way that we talk about business improvement is this. We make an incremental improvement. You basically, and this is the foundation behind whether it's Lean or Six Sigma or any other methodology, is that you study a process, you identify the biggest factors today, right? What are the causal factors that are affecting this, or what are the variables that affect this the most today? And then you go and treat those specifically. So you're basically scoping down your attention to only the most significant variables or factors that you can fix. And what that does is it moves you up the performance curve Then once you get there, if you understand that entire DMAIC sequence, you lock it in and you control it. You make sure that you sustain it. So it gets consolidated there. And then you go, okay, let's move it again. If it's important and there's going to be value from this, it's on the value stream, let's target another a project around this. And we'll fix the next one or two variables that are having the biggest impact today on that process. And then you move further up the performance curve. And you do that repeatedly. And this is the principle behind continual improvement. It's why it's called continual improvement. It means you continually fix it in incremental stages, but you're locking it in. And one of the big factors of this is if you're targeting a giant leap up here, right, you're not going to get any gains or benefits until you get up here, which is probably impossible anyway. Whereas here, short incremental improvement, what happens is you get a gain at this point. So you're getting benefits much, much earlier in the overall time associated with improvement. So you're locking in a small incremental gain, performance gain, benefits that come from that performance gain, whatever. But here's the real cool thing. Because it can be done quickly, because you lock it in quickly and it's sustained, it gives people a good experience of business improvement. So they have a success. It's a short-term win. It's a little win. They get a pat on the back, but they achieve something. And that can have a significant effect on the culture of an organization in the way that they consider change to be good or bad. So change ends up becoming fun. Do that a few times, people will start to pursue it. And I've seen that repeatedly in organizations in my 50 years of working. So consolidation at the new level, and then you would do it again, and so on and so on. So looks like this. Second project, third project, fourth project. You're locking them in. You're giving people a good experience. This is the principle, the first principle. Continual improvement is an ongoing process of change followed by consolidation. So it's change it a little bit, lock it in. Change it a little bit, lock it in. Change it a little bit, lock it in. And that is the way to incrementally move up a performance curve, and at the end of the day, move further up than you would if you targeted the optimum result. So that's the principle. Now, principle number 2 is this. Y is a function of multiple x's. That's the first part of it. Now, what does that actually mean to begin with? Well, first of all, the Y is referencing an output variable, right? So, for example, if you're, measuring, the length of a pen, the length of the pen is the Y, and then the x's are those variables that affect the length of the pen. So in this case, the x's here can be drawn visually to indicate their relationship with this particular y. Now, the way we write y as a function of x is this way. That's called the transfer function, to give it a technical name. Now, as an example, right, on the screen, let's just say we were measuring flight duration of an aircraft. What would be the variables that affect flight duration? Well, payload, how much load the plane is actually carrying. Number 2, the altitude that they fly at, and wind speed, and so on and so on and so on. So that would be a visual representation of the idea that y, which in this case is flight duration, is affected by the x's, which in this case is payload, altitude, wind speed, distance, who's flying it, and so on, right? So y is a function of x. Now, the second part of the principle is this. Rapid improvement occurs when you focus on the key x's. And we alluded to that in the first principle, and that's what this whole thing, or this particular principle, is going to focus on specifically. So let's draw a bigger picture here. Let's just say we're doing some sort of business improvement. Then what happens particularly when we're doing Six Sigma-ish type work and utilizing quantitative analysis, we basically hypothesize about all of the x's that affect the y. So in this case, you might say, listen, we're trying to fix this, cycle time or something like that, and we say, well, what are all the variables that affect that? It's affected by, hours worked during a day, the experience in years of the operators, the ambient temperature, so on and so on. So you hypothesize about all these x's. Now, how do we control this? How do we fix it and make an incremental improvement? Well, basically, what we need to do is identify which of these variables has the strongest relationship at a given point in time with that y. And then all we need to do is go and adjust those or affect those or control those with some sort of solution. And by doing that, we then get control of the y specifically. Now, when it comes to statistics, and I kind of suggest this at the beginning, if you understand the principle that we're talking about here, then you'll understand statistics. All we do when we're doing cause and effect type analysis is we're hypothesizing about the y's, and then all we're doing when we use statistics, regardless of the type of statistics it is we're quantifying the relationships between these x's and the y if they are variables. So if you can quantify that relationship, it tells you how significant the relationship is. That's basically all statistics does. And give me a statistic that doesn't do that, and I'll be surprised, because I haven't found it. So that's it. That's the principle. Y is a function of multiple x's. Rapid improvement occurs when you focus on the key x's. So that's the key behind Six Sigma specifically.